So a little bit of background. So you are in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. Was that where you're from? Is that where you were born and raised?
I was actually born in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I was raised in little villages kind of around the southeast, a little village called Minton, Saskatchewan. We were about 30 clicks away from the American border. So I spent many a weekend down in Montana, like Plentywood, Montana. We'd go to the country bar there, and they'd have a live band.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my music education. Back then, in Saskatchewan, it was all country. So
Yeah.
the only thing I had to rebel against country was hair metal. So I got really deep into hair metal, like Poison and Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and Slaughter and the whole nine yards. So that was my earliest, my favorite part of my childhood was driving down to Plentywood, Montana.
Yeah.
With a 6-pack of beer. I found a 6-pack of Canadian beer goes a long way in America because, of course, their beer is basically, horse piss. So a girl's more likely to make out with you if you got a 6-pack of Molson Canadian on you than a pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon or something.
Oh, it's essential equipment on any road trip, right? It's decent beer.
That's right. That's right.
So is that sort of when we talk about country from that era, is that sort of is that Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, was it all that stuff, or was that the sort of the pop country? Was that sort of creeping in, or you Garth Brooks and that kind of stuff?
Well, and see, and around that time, like I didn't mind the old country. Like whenever somebody would put on like Johnny Cash or Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, those guys, that was all fine.
Yeah.
Because in my household, I grew up on Elvis, and it was 100% Elvis all the time. But old country kind of fit in that mold. But when I was growing up, it was all this garbage like Travis Tritt, and it was what did Tom Petty call it? Like really shitty pop music with a fiddle. That's what it was. So the only thing I had to rebel against that was the complete opposite, which at the time was, in 84, 85 was hair metal. So
yeah, they were weird times. And it's kind of like, because I coming from UK, I have no concept of country at all, really. I think the first time I heard country music, really, like contemporary country music, was friggin' Achy Breaky Heart. That was the first thing that ever hit the charts that any was really heard. Now, my granddad was into a lot of that stuff. Wasn't that Jim Reeve, the distant drums, and he would listen to Johnny Cash and those guys, but I was a little bit too young for that, right? I didn't really have that ear for country because I grew up with Queen and Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and the Kinks and all those guys. So country just sounded really foreign and really alien to me, right? So I didn't really get into that. And so it's always interesting now when I go back and I listen to some of those early records, and I like a lot of those early country artists, and especially when you see that influence that fed into what Tom Petty was listening to. So those early country stuff and the early rock and roll stuff like Elvis and Chuck Berry and Bill Haley and all those guys. So you see elements of all those different bits and pieces creeping into his music, right?
Oh, 100%. And you really hear the influence, especially in guys like Johnny Cash on Tom Petty. And early Johnny Cash was very much like Jerry Lee Lewis and Carl Perkins and Elvis at the time, right? Like he was playing almost kind of pop and kind of segued more into country. But all those influences are kind of encompassed by Tom Petty. And maybe that's why I love Tom Petty so much, because he's got the Elvis, he's got the Carl Perkins, he's got a little Jerry Lee in there, but he's got the Johnny Cashes and the Waylon Jennings of the world in there too, just to create his own sound that is so unique. And what did Dave Grohl said? It's just Tom Petty. You can't describe it any other way.
Yeah, he transcends sort of genre, right? Like, and he's definitely, I think, people say like Heartland Rock. I think it's that same label I think Springsteen gets and a few other people get, but I think it's one of those labels that just gets applied when people can't pin down, well, he's this, because, well, yeah, he does that sometimes, but then he'll throw in You Got Lucky, and then he'll throw in a blues album, or then he'll throw in a little bit of country or whatever. So he just, whatever the song needs, that's how he plays it. That's how he writes it, right?
Oh, it's incredible. Even like his concept album, Southern Accents, has this really weird sitar song written by an Englishman, Dave Stewart, called Don't Come Around Here No More. Like it's just so encompassing of what Tom Petty is. It's great.
Absolutely. So just quickly for my listeners, so I met you, or sort of met you virtually because we haven't met in person yet, through podcasting. And so Corey, for my listeners, is the host, and I've talked about this on my podcast before, is the host of, 3 podcasts at the moment because he's just crazy. And the Podcast Will Rock, which is a Van Halen podcast, Backtracks Aerosmith, which is an Aerosmith podcast, and then Backtracks theme music. And I really got into the Van Halen podcast, and Corey and Mark Camire, who's his co-host, very kindly had me on the show. And it is, without trying to blow smoke up your ass, man, I've told you this before, it's one of the best formats on the internet. Your chemistry between you guys is phenomenal, and it sort of sets a bar for music podcasting as far as I'm concerned. So tell the people about maybe just a little bit of background and how did you get into podcasting, and obviously why music? Why was that the thing you wanted to pick up on and go with?
Well, originally it was movie trivia that got me into podcasting. I always kind of loved movies and got into movies, and there was a thing on the internet called Movie Trivia Schmodown that I was a fan of, and there was a little community of us who were kind of into that show, and all these little fan leagues started up. And one of the fan leagues was looking for a video editor. And in my day job, I've been a community television producer for over 20 years, so I have easy access to editing software and stuff. So I just kind of put up my hand and said, I'll edit for you in my free time.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Mark. He was one of the competitors in this movie trivia league. And I became the commissioner of the Geek-tacular division, which is all your geek movies like Star Wars, Star Trek, and all that. And so I would do a weekly, and we treated it just like a sport, right? So I did a weekly wrap-up show with different competitors, and Mark would be on the show. And so we talk about movies and stuff. And he did a podcast at the time called Rantings of a Maniac, and he would just kind of rant about whatever he want, usually movies, geek stuff, but he also loved music. And after Eddie Van Halen passed away, he wanted to do it on Van Halen, and he's like, do you want to come on and talk a little Eddie Van Halen, because they knew I loved classic rock.
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely. We did like an hour and a half show just on Eddie Van Halen. It was just such an easy back and forth talking music with him, even though I'm considerably older than he is, and we have much different tastes. I gravitate to the Tom Pettys of the world. He's more into like obscure European death metal and stuff like that. But we had this common ground with Van Halen that one day I just, we still chatted every once in a while. I said, hey, you want to, I got this podcast I really love called Pot of Thunder, where they're breaking down the entire Kiss catalog. And they mentioned on one of their shows, somebody asked them, what would be another great band to do? And Chris L., one of the hosts of Pot of Thunder, said, I think a Van Halen show would be great. Yeah. Because you don't want to pick a band that has an immaculate catalog, because you know what I'm saying, this is great, this is great, this is great every week. You could do an AC/DC podcast, but the songs are so similar, like you don't have a lot of variety in what you're talking about. But Van 100%. Halen, you got three different frontmen, you've got these very different eras of the band. And you have some all-time stinkers mixed in there too that you can kind of have some fun with. 90% of the catalog is brilliant, and 10% is just, what the hell were you thinking? So we said, let's put all the Van Halen songs on a wheel. Let's spin the wheel every week and just talk about whatever comes up. Which we thought, because Pot of Thunder kind of did something similar, just a random song every week. You don't know what's coming up.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't believe us. They thought, oh, you must know going into recording. We have no clue. And because you've been on the show.
Yeah.
We literally have a wheel. We literally spin the wheel. Whatever comes up, we're chatting about. So we don't always get our facts right. And that really ticks off a whole ton of people. But folks like yourself seem to really get the concept of the show, and that we're rediscovering the catalog. We're not experts. We're just having fun listening to music we love and reinvesting into the catalog and appreciating the band. So that's how the show kind of got started. And the next thing you know, we have the Deep Dive podcast people reaching out to us like, hey, do you want to be a part of the show? And we got Eric Sanich from Van Halen News Desk writing articles on us, and Greg Renoff, who literally wrote the book on early Van Halen, being on the show, and it's kind of taken off from there.
So cool. And I think, like I said, I'll tell my listeners why I love this show so much. And it is because of that. It's because sometimes you'll spin a song where it might be a song that you and Mark just haven't listened to in a long time, or even sometimes maybe one you just don't remember and haven't heard at all. So getting that live, either first time or rediscovery in real time for a listener is super engaging, and it makes you kind of evaluate, if you're talking, oh, listen to this, listen to that. I think when you know a song really, really well, you tend to start to forget about certain parts of it. So for us fans who are sort of, I was away from Van Halen for a long time, and your podcast got me back into them. For me, it was like a reminder of, I'd forgotten just how good those guys were, and then so when you get in and you go through and we listen to the song and then we pause and we talk about it, it just brings a whole new level of appreciation for that music and those songs, which was a revelation to me that you could do something that way. It was amazing.
Well, revelation to us too. Like neither of us got really deep into a different kind of truth when it came out. You kind of heard the singles, and like, oh, that's okay, and kind of moved on. But in early episodes, we spent a lot of different kind of truth right off the hop, and it was like, this is a lot better than I remember.
Yeah.
And even songs like, just not that long ago, we did Mine All Mine off of OU812, and it's like, that's a song Mark hadn't heard in forever. I just heard it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, Mark, you're in for a treat. Wait for the guitar solo. And he was blown away. He's like, I forgot how great that was. And that's the fun for us. And I'm glad that that's carrying over to some people listening to the show. That's amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so you're talking earlier there, you mentioned earlier that, Van Halen's got a really good, solid catalog, but there are a few plums in there. And my new podcast about Queen, there's definitely the same issue there with, there's 89% of the catalogue is fantastic. And there are elements of each song that are brilliant. But some of them you think, man, oh man, why did no one say, don't put Invisible Man on the Miracle, for Christ's sakes? What are you doing?
Delilah.
A song
Freddie
about
wrote
cats.
a song about his cat.
But when I got into sort of Petty's catalogue, that was one of the things that really sort of lit a fire under me with Tom Petty's. When I got into him was a lot later in life. And I'm one of those people who gets obsessive about new artists I find. So I got, well, I'm going to go back and I'll listen through and I'll start with the first album, the second album, third album, get to Damn the Torpedoes. And I didn't really know Damn the Torpedoes other than probably Refugee, maybe Here Comes My Girl. Getting to Hard Promises, getting to Long, and then you think, wait a minute, this guy's it's hit album after hit album after hit album, and not like 7, 8, 9 out of 10 on every song, but every album is really, really good. And then you keep going, and every album, I'm, apart from one that I'm a little less enthusiastic about that I haven't talked about on my podcast yet, but then you get to Wildflowers, and then it's game over, right? Then it's like, this guy's just a genius. Like, this guy can write literally any kind of song in any kind of style and make it his own, and his lyric is honest. You believe every single word he sings, and that's what got me into it. So how deep is your sort of knowledge of Tom's catalog? What's your relationship with his music, and how did you get into his stuff?
Well, originally it was Don't Come Around Here No More. That video was huge. And I remember not originally liking the song that much, and the video was kind of freaky, like, what the hell is this thing? But it was everywhere. You couldn't escape it. To me, the song that really got me into Tom Petty was from, I'm thinking it might be the album you're not that fond of, but Let Me Up, I've Had Enough.
Okay.
The song was jamming me. And that came out like, this is, that was a real banger. Way back in 87. I thought, this is great. And then from there, you got the Wilburys. Then from the Wilburys, you got Full Moon Fever. And that was I was full blown Tom Petty ever since then, because Jamming Me is a great song.
Well, co-written with Bob Dylan, right? Bob Dylan and Mike Campbell co-wrote that. And so that comes off the back of, obviously, the Heartbreakers tour with Dylan, and there is backing band for that, which, again, just always blows my mind that to go out on the road to support Bob Dylan, that's one thing. That'd be honor enough, especially because, Benmont Tench was a huge Dylan fan, a Dylanologist. He knew his entire catalogue inside out. And they'd always look to him for the key changes, because Dylan would change keys just on a whim, right? Well, we're doing it in D now, so they're all looking at Ben like, what the fuck, dude? What do we play? So they just follow him. But then to not only do that, to go and open and play a half-hour set of Heartbreaker songs, or 45 minutes, whatever they did, but then to be the house band for Bob Dylan, so you've got to have serious chops musically. You can't do that if you're sort of just an average rock band, or a sort of a pubby kind of level, because there are a lot of those rock bands around that time that just couldn't do that. They don't have the musicianship to do that. And so when you learn about that stuff, that's another layer where you think, okay, well, it's not just Tom Petty, and it's not Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers as backup band. This is a band. This is a band who are tight as nails. They're just absolutely on, and they can all play their instruments properly, and they can all do it consistently on stage, which just, again, that's another thing that sort of made me think, yeah, this is the guy for me. This guy's serious about music.
I tell you, there's a great scene in Running Down a Dream, Peter Bogdanovich's documentary, where the guys in the band are talking about that, like how Bob Dylan will just on a whim, extend a song or cut a song short, and actually show one of the performances. I think it was during Knocking on Heaven's Door, where the band was kind of ramping up, getting ready for the chorus, and Bob just kind of, in the background, like, hold on. And he kept going on the harmonica, and everyone's kind of got to be ready for that. Like, okay, how many more beats are we going before he kicks it in again? And then Bob would give him a little thumbs up or something, and then Stan would kick in, and then they would get into the verse. But it's, as a band, like, how tough is that?
Yeah.
Like, it's one you're on your toes all the time, right? The entire set, you're like, what the hell's going to happen? But that invigoration, I think, especially at that time in the Heartbreakers' career, right? Like, to be opening for Bob Dylan at this moment, they've been a band for quite a while at this point, and to get that new infusion of energy like that, I think really did them a lot of good.
Yeah, and I think the challenge too of it, right? And like you said, I mean, it's one thing, like, lots of musicians, and when you go watch, especially local bands where they're smaller, you can really see that interaction on stage between band members where they're going for the right bars. You just see those little cues and the little looks in between. But when it's, well, first of all, it's fucking Dylan in front of a huge crowd, and you're not maybe quite used to where he stops and starts, or where he sort of drifts into something different, and just be able to react to those. Yeah, again, that's just that level of musicianship again, right? So
100%. And Heartbreakers, everyone kind of thinks of Tom Petty as being Tom Petty, right? But the Heartbreakers as a band, like you said, just super tight. And I don't know if they get enough credit in the Tom Petty lexicon for their contributions, because of course Tom is the front man, he writes the songs, he's the voice and all that. But geez, you look at guys like Stan Lynch and Benmont Tench, and of course Mike Campbell, and even Ron Blair back in the time. Then you get into Howie,
Yeah.
you know, how integral to the band Howie was, right?
Yeah.
And just as a band, these guys were phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's that thing, like I know that I was talking to, I think it was Jeff Slate I was chatting to, and he was saying that the E Street Band are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a band
Mhm.
alone, apart from Springsteen, right? When you think that's really odd and unusual because they've never had any output as a band. They
Right.
really are, you know what I mean? So yeah, Springsteen writes, but he doesn't write with them in the same way that Tom Petty wrote with the Heartbreakers. And I always go through Wikipedia articles and I change them. Anywhere it says Tom Petty's backup band, nope, take that out. It's Tom Petty. That's Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. He was one of the Heartbreakers, you know.
Yeah.
Just winds me up. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, and because he was 100%, we're a band, like, yeah, because you know Tom Petty had the record deal, and Tom Petty, you know, his name had to kind of be up front and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Heartbreakers were 100% a band, and I would love to see like the Heartbreakers as a band be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like the E Street Band was, because there's so many interesting parallels. Like Bruce would even break away from the E Street Band and do a solo album,
Yeah.
like Tunnel of Love or something, right? And Tom did that. And a lot of people are like, well, why the hell, you know, no, this is just Tom Petty, even though a lot of the Heartbreakers played on it. Why is it a solo album, without really knowing the history or why it, you know, he considered those solo albums.
It was so crucial, right? Like you said, after coming off the back of Southern Accents and Let Me Up and get into a bit of a creative sort of funk where he wasn't too sure which way he was going to go, then you get that chance happening with the Wilburys and he forms this connection with Jeff Lynne, and then you get Full Moon Fever, and that just reinvigorates his entire career. And it wasn't just because, I don't think it was just because it was a commercial success, but I think that he got back to, I think he fell in love with the process. You know, because he talked about that in interviews. It was the cycle of album tour, album tour, album tour, album, and it's just endless and it's exhausting. And you creatively, it would be very difficult to maintain that level of, you know, of excellence. So take that break, go into the studio with a different approach, with a different guy, you know, and maybe some different musicians too, just to shake things up. I think that prolonged his career by years and years. And I think Wildflower was the same thing. I think Mojo was the same thing, coming in, getting Ryan Noliadia to produce that and doing it on live off the floor in the clubhouse. All those little things where he sort of had that sense to recognize when I need something here to re-challenge myself and get myself refocused. And he wasn't afraid to take those bold steps.
And Jeff Lynne was huge in that, because up until then, you know, the Heartbreakers would record the same way every time, you know, live on the floor as a 5-piece and do whatever, right? Whereas Jeff Lynne is very much, you do your part, we're going to piece it all together. And just that change in how they recorded, like Tom Petty always said, he was always in favor of the process that led to the best output, whatever the best product was. Stan Lynch was very much, I hate doing the Jeff Lynne stuff because, you know, he's alone in a room, he does his drums, that he screws off. Whereas Tom's like, as long as the end product is what I want, I don't care. So that different recording process, I think, really helped him back in, you know, the late 80s doing Full Moon Fever, which, you know, one of his biggest albums of all time.
Yeah. And you think about sort of anytime you bring someone else into the studio, it's the same as, you know, as an audio professional, whatever. If you get someone else in who's got a different skill set and maybe does something in a different way, that's only good because you learn from that. And maybe you don't take everything, but you definitely take what you need, right? And I remember talking to my buddy Randy about how they would record drums back then. He said quite often the drummer's not playing that lick. He's playing the snare, and then on the next take he's playing the kick, and then on the next, and sometimes it'll just be a programmed hat, and then they'll play the toms. Sometimes will be live because it's hard to do a fill one at a time. But then you can piece those together. And he said that was Jeff Lynne did that because back in the ELO days, he really wanted that very tight control over the sound and the separation of those sounds, so you don't get bleed from the cymbals into the snare and all those kinds of things. So, but as a drummer, I mean, you play drums too. Can you imagine having to try to get your timing on one of your drums? It'd be a nightmare, an absolute nightmare.
Especially for a guy like Stan Lynch, right? Like, you know, he's a performance drummer, you know, to sit there, okay, we're doing the snare today. Like, he would be bored out of his mind for hours. You could see why he would hate it, but I get Jeff Lynne's point of view too. And you just think of how brilliant is Jeff Lynne to like be able to think of that, right? And to separate those and then put them all together and make a masterpiece.
Yeah, no, a great musician, a great songwriter in his own right too. And anytime you hear him interviewed, it's the same with all the Wilburys, right? They're all just very genuine, and they've no right to be as humble as they are because they're all Hall of Famers, you know. And for Christ, you've got a Beatle there, for God's sakes. You got Roy Orbison, who used to party with Elvis. Like, these guys are serious top end elite level talents, but they were just 5 musicians who got together in a room, wrote a song a day, and then sat around and got Roy Orbison to tell them stories about Elvis. That was the mo, you know. That's what they did.
Well, and the way that they all came together, like I know on your show you talked about, you know, Tom Petty going to buy the baseball mitt and meeting Jeff Lynne kind of on the street there.
Yeah,
and just, hey, we should get, and, you know, all the George Harrison leaving a guitar. Tom Petty's like, well, I'm going to go record this B-side over at Bob Dylan's studio because
Yes.
he's got a studio. You want to come? Yeah, I'll come. And they show up. Oh, Roy Orbison's here. Well, let's get him involved. And there's Bob Dylan just kind of grilling for everybody, burgers and steaks and shit while they're writing music. And then they come up with Handle with Care. And then Warner Brothers is like, this isn't a B-side. Like, this is way too good to put on a B-side. So we'll just keep going again. Let's write 9 more of these and make an album.
It's so funny too, right? Because the names are such household names and we all know them. Probably Jeff Lynne actually would have been the least known in the States, I would think, out of the 5. And Petty probably in England would have been the least. But we forget they are still just musicians. And they enjoy what musicians enjoy doing more than anything else is sitting around playing music and talking about music with other musicians. And so it doesn't really matter to them that that's Roy Orbison or that's Bob Dylan. Or you've heard that anecdote, I'm sure, where they're all sitting around and Harrison goes to grab a drink or something, and Dylan leans over very seriously and says to Tom Petty, "You know he was in the Beatles, right?"
And the funny thing is, like, they didn't really care so much that Harrison was in the Beatles. It was Roy Orbison's right there. Like you said, he used to party with Elvis. Yeah, tell us Elvis stories.
God, and again, another almost he's kind of an artist, I think, who's kind of been forgotten. Everyone remembers Pretty Woman, everyone knows, Crying, the big hits and things, but everyone forgets what a super inventive songwriter Roy Orbison was. He would write songs that had 8 verses, no chorus, 1 verse, 2 bridges, or 1 like he fucked around with the form all the time and just wrote whatever he felt. And that voice, I mean, my God, what a singer.
Well, it's iconic. And he was going through a real career renaissance at this time. Like, Tom Petty had, with Jeff Lynne, had they wrote You Got It for his solo record at the time. That was very, very big. And, I can't believe we're writing a song with Roy Orbison, but, Roy Orbison was getting really big at that time. And Tom Petty even tells a story. Like he said, I talked to him 2 days before he died. And Roy was like, can you believe the Wilburys went platinum? This is so great. And let's take it on the road. And I can't wait for the next one. And then before you know it, he's gone. It's unbelievable.
And it still breaks your heart when you watch that video and you see the empty rocking chair. It really still pulls on your heartstrings. And of course, watching that video now, because Tom's gone and George is gone as well, it's kind of hard to watch sometimes,
Yeah, it's just Bob and Jeff at this point.
But that's End of the Line, right? I think that's the video for End of the Line. That's right.
It is, yeah, because Roy was in the video for Handle with Care.
That's right. Okay, so we get into Full Moon Fever. That sort of kickstarts your interest in Petty. And so after that, then we get into the Grey Wide Open, which has a huge single off that one too, right? The title track's a big single. And then you get Greatest Hits and we get into that stuff. So do you remember when, because I always use Wildflowers as my sort of a real strong touch, but do you remember when that came out? Were you listening to Petty and actively sort of looking for that album when it came out?
Oh, totally. I was in university around that time. And a buddy of mine named Rob Keys, we really got into a bunch of different music together. That's how I kind of got really deep into Queen around that time too. And Tom Petty's Greatest Hits was a huge album for us. Like we spun that all the time. Yeah. Because I didn't listen to a lot of older Petty at that time. So you always know about American Girl. Yeah. And Refugee and songs like that. But that's when I really started to delve into the catalog a little bit more. And like I said, Into the Great Wide Open was a big album. And then Wildflowers hit. And that first single comes out. You Don't Know How It Feels. And the iconic Saturday Night Live performance too with Dave Grohl. Yeah. And you're like, this is amazing. And then You Wreck Me comes out and you pick up that album and it's so eclectic and it's so just incredibly well written. And that's when I really realized we're dealing with just the epitome of singer-songwriter. Like he is one of the greatest songwriters of all time, bar none. And Wildflowers just encapsulates that so well because all those songs are just incredibly well written. You Wreck Me is a perfect song. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. Lyrically, how it's put together, musically, it's played perfectly. I'll be the boy in the corduroy pants. You'll be the girl at the high school dance. I was that kid in the corduroy pants. I could relate to that. Tom Petty relates to me. This is amazing. That song is a masterwork. It's absolutely unreal.
That album sounds so. I mean, Rick Rubin. What again? Another genius kind of thing to bring in Rick Rubin, who wasn't really known for rock and roll back then. He was, Def Jam, and he was more into sort of the hip hop stuff. To bring him in, and people forget too that Rick Rubin was only, I think he was 32, 33. He was a pretty young fella at that time. So to bring him in, and for Tom to bring him in and trust him with this thing that was, I think he realized fairly shortly in the process that I'm onto something a bit bigger than maybe I've done before. So to trust this young kid who's somewhat untested with rock and roll, but again, just that sort of that sense to be able to know when you need a change, to recognize that someone can help you. And again, through that process, obviously Stan's left, and to know when Steve Ferroni sits down and plays the drum beat, dum, dum, tch, dum, dum, you know, he plays that little drum beat. So that's the guy we need. That's the guy who's got the rhythm and the groove and the feel that we need for this album. Very prescient.
Oh, totally. And he got him back on the floor in the studio playing his band. Because
Absolutely.
into the Grade Wide Open, there were, you know, how did Tom put it? He said, we're all a bit moody in that period. So they recorded all their stuff separate and put it together after the fact.
Yeah.
But Wildflowers brought everything back together. And, you know, you can have songs like Wildflowers, which kicks off the album, this nice, just quiet acoustic thing. And then you got like songs like Cabin Down Below or Honeybee, like these kind of hard, heavy rocker types that just work on the same album together. As a real testament to Tom and to Rick Rubin. Like you said, just he did things completely different than Jeff Lynne, and the outcome was still a masterpiece.
Absolutely. And again, during those sessions, you mentioned, you know, we're talking about greatest hits there, and Last Dance with Mary Jane. Here's a question for you, because I was talking to someone about this the other day. I can't think of another band's greatest hits album where they put, you know, when they record extra tracks because the label needs a new song to sell the album. I can't think of another one that's got a song as strong as that actually, had it not been on the greatest hits and just been released as a single or been released on another album, that would be on the greatest hits. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
I can't think of another one.
They're always cast-offs, like B-sides or just discarded things from wherever. And Mary Jane's Last Dance actually came from the Full Moon Fever sessions, if I remember correctly. He was kind of working on it around that time and just kind of revived it for this.
Yeah, he had the idea for it. Yeah, and then absolutely, yeah. So yeah.
And there was a second song on there too, Something in the Air was brand new off that. And that's another one. That's a great Tom Petty and the Heartbreaker song.
Yeah. Well, again, you start getting into the covers. That's where you start talking about, you know, again, one of my guests said that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were probably one of the all-time, if not the all-time great cover bands, because they would do, you know, when they did their sets, they'd do 23, 24 songs. They'd always put in 2 or 3 covers. And when you go to setlist.fm and you look through the volume of covers that band did, they've done about 300 covers live, which is just incredible, right? To have that sort of breadth of, and again, that background, and it's Carl Perkins, and it's JJ Cale, and it's, you know, it's Chuck Berry, and it's the Stones, and it's the Beatles. Just have all those influences and be able to pull them out and just say, yeah, let's do this one tonight. And obviously that's the spur of them. We'll rehearse it a little bit, run through it a couple of times. Everyone remembers where the changes are? What key are we in? Okay, let's do it. Just crazy, you know.
And Thunderclap Newman, who originally did Something in the Air. I've never heard of Thunderclap Newman before. I'm like, this is a really great song. And then you look into it, and it's like, it's not even Tom Petty's. Thunderclap Newman released that in 1969. And
put together by Pete Townsend from The Who. It was kind of an assembled band to showcase the talents of the guitarist. And so they did one album, and then they disappeared from the face of the earth. So it's a weird little thing. But during that session where they recorded Something in the Air, I think they recorded something around 16 or 17 covers in like 2 or 3 days or something like that. Wow. And so they picked off Something in the Air. There was one that kind of stood out. And it's always kind of unusual that you thought that maybe it would be a Byrds song that they would put on there, because Tom loved Roger McGuinn so much that maybe it would be a Byrds song that would make it. But yeah, that song fits beautifully and sort of dovetails the whole thing. So
absolutely. And that was the album that really got me into the back catalog of Tom Petty, because the American Girl Breakdown, Listen to Her Heart, I Need to Know, like all the greats are on that one. So it's like you pick up Damn the Torpedoes, you pick up You're Gonna Get It, and Southern accents, and you're like, holy shit, like this guy just from day one, this band was firing on all cylinders.
And it's funny too, when you look at greatest hits, and me and my album rap co-host John Paulson, we're going to be talking about this, because we were looking at that, and you look at what's not on that album on greatest hits. Insider's not on there. You've got there's at least, I think, what was Straight Into Darkness, which again wasn't released as a single, but it's just a monumental song. So you think about the stuff that got left on, that could have been a double album quite easily, you know?
Oh yeah. Southern Accents isn't on there. And
Southern Accents isn't on there. Yeah.
Crazy.
In fact, I think only Don't Come Around Here No More is the only one from Southern Accents on that album. Yeah, that's right.
It is, yeah. And then you got, the 3 big ones from his solo effort. Running Down a Dream, Free Fall, and Learning to Fly, which, famously Stan Lynch hated, Howie hated, Ben Butt didn't want to play him. And then the irony is that those were like Tom Petty's 3 biggest hits, and they had to play it on every single show since then. So
I think Stan said something along the lines of that, where those were covering someone else's songs, and it's, Stan, and he holds his hands up to his stubbornness as a young man and says that, I was more of a dick than I needed to be. But it's still just, why wouldn't you want to play these phenomenal songs? Like Running Down a Dream, to go play that live, anyone would want to do that in front of a packed house, right?
And you know, watch Steve Ferroni when he's playing it. Like you can't sandblast the smile off his face. He is having a ball. But like even Howie, when they're recording, he told Tom, you know, I really don't like this song. And Tom's like, well, if you don't like it, don't play on it. And Howie fucked off. And that song was Free Fallin'.
Yeah.
It's like Free Fall, really?
Yeah, it's just nuts. And then I think that's right around the same time when Mike had written Boys of Summer, or the music for what would become Don Henley's Boys of Summer. And Tom passed on that one, right? So again, you think it's so weird because I Boys of Summer is a phenomenal song, and it would be weird to hear different words over it. It would be, you know, I don't know if it would have fit with what they were doing back then. I think maybe it might have been before that. Actually, it might have been Let Me Up, I've Had Enough Era, but I'd have to look at the dates. But yeah, just, and again, you know, you get into, we talked about Dylan, but then there was Johnny Cash's house band on that second album with Rick Rubin. How he produced John Prine's album that won a Grammy, and all the Heartbreakers played on it. They played on Stevie Nicks' album on Belladonna. They played on so many. When you get into it, it's like these guys played with fucking everyone. So they must have been, like you said, it goes back to A, they must have been a good band, but B, they must have been really good to work with, because you don't bring people in who are going to cause problems or are going to be difficult to work with, no matter how good they are, right? So,
well, especially Johnny Cash, right? Like the legendary Johnny Cash. Yeah, you got to be something for Johnny to say, yeah, what did he say? Forgive me if I get the quote wrong. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but Tom said Johnny sent him a note that said something like, "You're a good guy to ride the river with," or something like that.
That's exactly it.
And
yeah.
You can see Tom just like, you know, it's the greatest thing anybody's ever said to me. Like Johnny Cash said that about me, but Johnny Cash did a version of "I Won't Back Down," which I think Tom even said, "I wish I'd never sang it," because he did a much better version. It's iconic. Johnny Cash's version of that is unbelievable.
Well, that line from Walls, "Some days are diamonds, some days are rocks." That's another thing Johnny Cash had said to Tom, and Tom's like, "Hey, I'll file that away because I can probably use that at some point," you know.
And lyrically, one of my favorite Tom Petty songs was Walls. Like it's just brilliant.
And that was one that I didn't hear. I would say I only stumped. Okay, I've talked about this before, but She's the One, the album, the original soundtrack. I sort of just never bothered listening to it because I thought it was a sort of a typical movie soundtrack, and that there'll be one or two Tom Petty songs on it. I didn't realize that it was actually a Tom Petty studio album. So Walls passed me by completely for a long time, and I'd say it was probably only about maybe 5 years ago. So maybe just right around the time Tom died that I stumbled across it, and I thought, I've missed this for so long. This is beautiful. And you get two versions of it on the record. You know, you get that big rocked up version, the sort of the swingy version with Lindsey Buckingham singing backup vocals, and then you get the stripped down one, which is, I think, probably, well, no, but I won't say that because I'm going to ask you in the 10 questions. But I love both versions. But that stripped down version, when he played it live on that PBS special where he's wearing the black polo neck, and it's just him on acoustic, and then the band comes in quite quietly. God, what a beautiful, beautiful track. And the lyrics are phenomenal.
And you talk about that album, you know, Change the Locks, a great rock from that album, and Angel Dream. There's another one, had two different versions on that album, right? And I went and got the new version, Angel Dream, on vinyl just a couple months ago, and spun that, and it's such a great album.
Did you get the colored vinyl, or did you just get the regular? Yeah.
No, you got to get covered. Yeah, you got to get colored. Get colored.
Would you pick that up? Do you have a decent record store in Weyburn, or do you have to search online?
You know, I got a couple of used outlets nearby, but we travel to Regina quite a bit, and there's a Sunrise Records in Regina, so they had the color vinyl of Angel Dream.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Fillmore box set coming out.
Oh, that's going to be amazing.
So good. And I've got this, so you should, definitely. There's that contest online to win the Uber Deluxe, which is, I mean, when you look at that thing, it's got that symbol case. That's what Petty's Estate's done a phenomenal job of sort of continuing the legacy, and not, you know, some people will say they're cashing in, but they're putting out products and they're putting out things that the fans haven't heard before, and they're packaging them in a way that sort of makes it more appealing and more interesting, because you're getting sort of, you know, the replica laminators and the laminates and the set list, replica set list, and all that kind of stuff. And that's something that makes it, it's not just the songs anymore. Now it's the package that becomes important, right? So I'm really looking forward to that.
Could not agree more. And one of the shows I do is on Van Halen, and they're the worst for that. They don't do anything with that. Like they you know, there's talk of reissuing the first 6, but Alex hates Sammy for whatever reason. They won't reissue any of the Sammy albums. Like, they could be putting out all this stuff. Eddie left a treasure trove of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, keep flying the flag. And I love that the Tom Petty estate is doing this for us, because even just Angel Dream, I never had She's the One on vinyl. Now I have Angel Dream on vinyl. It sounds amazing. I can't wait for the Fillmore stuff, and there's going to be more. Even little things like when they release Keeping Me Alive. I remember when I heard that on the Tom Petty documentary, and he was lamenting the fact that he got talked out of putting it on Long After Dark. Like, this song's great. Where the hell can I find this song? And finally they released it, so I can listen to Keeping Me Alive whenever I want. I love that song.
Yeah. And Playback and the American Treasure and the live anthology, and there's so much stuff in there. And again, I think it's weird though, because it never really gets boring, because it's not just, Queen did that a lot with it, where you've got live at Hammersmith, live at you got all these live shows, and they're sort of one live set, and it's great because then you get to hear that full concert. But the Petty estates, they pick and choose sort of the best version. So again, it's more than just, I don't know, like another live set. It's kind of this thing that takes on a new life, and especially with the Fillmore stuff, because obviously that was the residency, and so they weren't constrained to the same set list every night, more or less, give or take 3 or 4 songs. With most bands is true, right? But they could say, okay, we know what, let's do a song from Long After Dark that we haven't done in 10, 15 years. Let's do a cover that we've never done before. Let's try this. So they have that freedom. And so you get this sort of completely different experience for them and for the fans. So to package that, and because everyone knew those shows had been recorded, and it was 97. So fans have been waiting a long time for those things to come out. So there's so much excitement, right?
Oh, that's such a great point. Just about the varied output that we get. You talked about Queen. I love all the stuff they're releasing after the fact, but they released 2 concerts from the Flash tour. Yeah, and it's like, okay, or like from the Hot Space tour. Actually, you got Queen on Fire at the Hollywood, and then you got
that's right, yeah,
Queen Rocks Montreal. We're both from the same tour, and it's like, well, these are pretty similar. So I like the fact that, especially with the Fillmore stuff and the live anthology, you're getting different versions. Like even the version of I Won't Back Down on live anthology is just stripped down with an acoustic guitar. Much slower tempo. Not my favorite version of I Won't Back Down. That'd probably be the Gainesville concert.
Oh God, yeah,
that is the ultimate version of I Won't Back Down for me. I just love everything about that. But thank God for the Tom Petty estate. Like, they're just doing right by us fans, and I wish other bands, Van Halen, would kind of pick up on that and maybe do a little something for their fans too.
Well, we'll have to get Eric Senich on it, right? We'll have to get Eric to start pushing this a little bit, see if they can make some waves to make them think about it. So
that's right.
So did you ever see the Heartbreakers live, Corey?
I never did. I know in 2010 on the Mojo tour, they were hitting Saskatoon, and I can't remember what happened that I wasn't able to go. But I never, I know me and another guy around here were kind of hoping, like, oh, you're on the 40th, maybe they'll add another leg. Usually they do the first leg, big markets in North America. Then usually they go to Europe for a little bit. And then usually they come back and do a second leg in North America and maybe do some smaller B markets. Yeah. And that's usually where Saskatoon fits in. So we're kind of holding out hope. And unfortunately, shortly after the first leg, Tom passed away. And one of the big regrets of my life, for sure, is I never got to see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Yeah, mine too. It's one of those things too that sort of, because I became a big fan, I don't know, 2015. And I think on the 40th anniversary tour, did they hit, was it just Toronto or Toronto, Montreal, or maybe did they do the West Coast?
Vancouver too.
Vancouver as well.
Pretty sure they did Vancouver, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a long travel if you're not absolutely gaga. Like even Foo Fighters, who I've seen the last 4 tours they've come through, I don't think I'd be traveling to Vancouver or Toronto. That's a big ticket, man. Like,
heck of a drive.
Flights,
yeah, closest.
Yeah,
like if you're looking to drive, I know Queen and Paul Rogers, I drove 12 and a half hours to St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh wow,
to see him there. So that kind of would have been a possibility. But when you're, you got a young family and stuff, it's harder to justify hopping in a car for 2 days to go see a band. So I was hoping they'd come a little closer, even if it was like Calgary, Edmonton, or Winnipeg. You know, you can make those in a day at least, and those are pretty easy. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Mike Campbell comes through with the Dirty Knobs. I'm sure because they've finished this tour now. I'm sure they're probably back in the studio already recording the next album, because that's Mike Campbell, right? But I'm hoping that they come through and hit some of those, like you said, some of those smaller markets, because that's the band that they are now. They're not a huge arena rock band. They're hitting, Odeon Event Center in Saskatoon would probably, or maybe the TCU place downtown. That would be perfect size for that band, right? So keeping everything crossed that they'll come through, or even Stan Lynch with Speaker Wars. Have you heard any of their stuff? The Speaker Wars, Stan Lynch's band?
Not really, not a ton. I hear they're really good though.
I guarantee you'd enjoy it. It's really, it really reminds me of, well, not all of it. The last song they didn't, but the stuff, it's sort of almost like Damn the Torpedoes era Heartbreakers. It's got that kind of late 70s honest to goodness rock and roll, guitars, drums, no fucking around. And then the last song they did reminded me a little bit more of Queen because it's got these big, huge multi-part harmonies. I was like, man, yeah, gotta go see these boys live because they're just rocking.
I'm in. I tell you what, if they come within like a 12-hour drive of us, I'll pick you up, Kevin. We'll check them out.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've gone through, we're sort of up to, and we're just talking about Mojo a little bit there. So Mojo comes out, and again, that was an album that probably I wouldn't have skipped over, but it didn't strike me quite as hard as it should have done the first time I heard it. But I think possibly it's because it's very, very different. Because it's got that really bluesy feel, and it starts out with that harmonica and Jefferson Jericho blues, and it's got that super live feel, and it was recorded live off the floor with almost no overdubs. But then going back, it's an album that I go back to time and time again now, because I think, again, it's that showcase of when you consider that the way it was recorded, that's another example of, well, this band, and especially at that stage in their career, they're really tight. And they could do what Kiss does. They could do what, Queen does or whatever. They could just go into greatest hits mode, and they would sell out every single stadium they book, and it would be fine, and no one would begrudge it. But the Heartbreakers, what do? Well, let's write a blues record, and let's do it live, and let's do this fan release where we release it to the fan club online early. And so again, that sense of sort of, fuck it, let's do what we want. We get to this point in our career now, we can do what we want, and this is what we want to do. I just love that about that record.
Oh, me too. And one of my favorite records is actually before that, The Last DJ. I love what they did on that record. But again, kind of night and day difference between Last DJ and Mojo. And that's the brilliance of this band, right? They could really do anything. Yeah. Whether, they could do a hard, heavy song that Dave Grohl goes, fuck yeah, like Honeybee, that's a fucking banger. And they can, and they can do something quiet and nice like Wildflowers. And they can do something, like Jefferson Jericho blues or something from Mojo, just do a blues record and own that too. It just shows the brilliance of Tom Petty.
Like Last DJ is one of those, again, I think it gets forgotten. It's one of those ones that gets forgotten about. Like, which artist at whatever level they're at can make a record that deliberately antagonizes record companies and calls them out for their bullshit and releases it on a major label. And some of the tracks off that record are just phenomenal. Have Love with Travel's on there. You've got, I think, When a Kid Goes Bad is on there, I think, right? That's on there.
It is, yep. Dreamville is brilliant.
Dreamville's on there. It's such a phenomenal record.
And it's kind of timely now with, like things like the sale of Twitter, when you have Tom Petty talking about, the boys upstairs want to see how much you'll pay for a thing you used to get for free.
Absolutely.
We're still getting that.
And Ticketmaster, right? Yeah. Ticketmaster with their flex pricing and the Springsteen tickets going for $4,500. And can you imagine what Tom Petty would think of that?
Oh my God. This is the guy that didn't want his record going up like $1, $1.01 or something.
$1, yeah.
Yeah, one exact, yeah.
Yeah.
$9.98, not on my watch, buddy. Or $9.89, I guess it would have been.
Yeah.
Whatever the number was. I love that story. Even when he tells the story, he's like, yeah, I realize it doesn't seem like that big of a jump. But in hindsight, back then, it really was another buck for a record. Like, we couldn't stand for it.
Well, and that was back in the days when, because we both grew up with physical media, which, the generations behind us have very little concept. Millennials maybe, but my kids have they've never put something into something else to watch or listen to it for the most part, right? It's all on a device. It's all on the phone. It's all on whatever it's on. It's on the TV. So we listen to music, and if you're a big avid music fan, you bought a lot of tape cassettes or vinyl or whatever it might be. And that does start to mount up. That might be the difference between being able to buy the new Tom Petty record or not being able to buy it. So I think that was it was savvy of him in a way, but the argument was very genuine. And I'm pretty sure that was the time when he was meeting. Was it then, or was it during the bankruptcy things where he was in a meeting with all the suits, and he said that no one was listening. They weren't listening to what I was saying. So he takes a switchblade out and just stabs it into the desk. And then they listened.
I love that, where the studio sends it like their big tough guy, like, just back down, kid. Like, who the hell do you think you are? Tom Petty said, I'd rather sell peanuts than give in to you. Like, I'm not backing down. And then he would write a song that is my favorite of all time. Yeah, about not backing down.
Absolutely brilliant. And so with so we've been through, so we talk about Mojo, and then I always tell people that there's two things that happen after Mojo. And that's one of them is that we get Mudcrutch. And so Tom Petty decides, I can sell out arenas, that's great. And I've got this band, the Heartbreakers, who are universally loved, we're Hall of Fame. I think the next thing I really need to do is put together the band where it all started with all my old friends, and we'll just go play small little 1,200 seaters. Again, do you know of any other major act that's ever done that? I just can't think of anyone who's ever done that.
there's not one. You don't see Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley saying, you know, let's get the guys we kind of started out with and reinvent that band. No one's doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, you know, and I guess when you've done it all, like Tom Petty, you know, let's get the old guys from Mudcrutch and put out an album. And they put out 2, didn't they?
Yeah.
With Mudcrutch. And
Mudcrutch, and again, some phenomenal songs, and they got a #1 single off the second album, I think, that wasn't even written by Tom. So, you know, that you get this thing again where you've got Benmont takes a lead vocal and Mike Campbell takes a lead vocal. He did take one on Echo. I think that's the one that Mike sings on. There's one song on there. I have to check that now that I've said that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in trouble with the Tom Petty nerd community because I don't want to get that wrong.
Are they as bad as the Van Halen nerd community? I got to ask, because we get raked over the coals quite a bit.
They're gentle but firm. Gentle firm. They're opposites, but they're polite usually. And the Tom Petty Nation, the Facebook group, is very well policed, so it doesn't get out of hand because people don't let it get out of hand, and everyone sort of understands. But if you make a mistake, you're going to get 20 people jumping within 2 minutes of you posting that. You're going to get corrected very, very quickly, right? So
yeah. As long as it's politely corrected, I could live with that. But it's when the guys say, you guys really don't fucking know what the hell you're talking about. It's like, well, I never said I did, but thanks for listening.
I mean, you literally say the opposite. And in the podcast, in the open, you literally say that you're not experts. You say that you're not music historians. What do you want? What do you want us to do, guys? You know? So.
No, we're learning as we go. That's why we bring Greg Renoff and Eric Senich on the show, so they can teach us.
Yeah. And so where can people find you, Corey? If people are looking for, because I really strongly urge people to check out and the podcast will rock. Backtrack Aerosmith, Backtracks,
Aerosmith Revisited,
Revisited, and Backtracks theme music. So
theme music.
And again, I'm up to episode 28, I think, on Aerosmith. I've enjoyed that, and it took me. I can't remember I was talking to you about this, but it took me a little while because I think I'd listened to the entire run of the Aerosmith show, of the Van Halen show, before I listened to Aerosmith. And so I was really used to hearing your voice and Mark's. So then listening to you and John, it's like, well, who's this guy who's kind of screwing up the flow and just being mean all the time? Like, but then when you realize what that relationship is, like, okay, no, I get what this is now. And it's like, okay, I love it's different, but I really still like it. But you're the common denominator between the two. So where can people find you?
Oh, they can find us Van Halen, if you like that show, www.podcastwillrock.com. Catch up on old episodes, get some merch. I know we have one of Kevin's designs, actually, the Play Splat and Bone. It won't let me upload for some reason. I got to keep working on that. But you can get yourself a Cult of Mariano shirt there. That's for sure. Designed by one Kevin Brown. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and on Twitter at podcastwillrock.com. If you like Aerosmith, check us out at Backtracks Aerosmith Revisited. Currently, we're just on Twitter at BT Aerosmith. You got some good episodes coming your way, my friend. When we get into the 30s, a friend of ours, mutual friend Jeff Saunders, just loaded his dice with hits. So we have like Crazy coming up. We have Ragdoll coming up. We have I Don't Want to Miss a Thing is coming up. It's been released already, but I can't wait to get your take on our episode on that one.
And what did you call that one? What did you call that one? You don't call I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. What did you call it?
I Don't Want to Lick Your Thing. It's kind of how it's known with the hardcore Aerosmith fans. And we do a show on movie music too, Backtracks theme music. I know just earlier tonight, we recorded a show with a guest on the theme song to Cannonball Run by Ray Stevens. So we're hitting the gamut on that one. We just did a Crash Test Dummy show. We did a Bon Jovi show right after that. Music and movies, two of our favorite things. And on my very first pick was Tiny Dancer from Almost Famous, one of my favorite songs from my favorite movie.
Okay, so that's all really for this week, folks. Go check out. I'll leave all my stuff online. You know where to find me. You can find me on Twitter at Tom Petty Project. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube. You know where I am at this point. So, but definitely go check out Corey and check out his co-hosts Mark Camire and John Mariano, who is a very unique individual and very, very funny. Just go check him out on Twitter.
Bastard. He's a grumpy bastard.
He's a misanthrope, right? But and I think we were talking offline before we started here. One of the things that I've found, not just with the Tom Petty community, but with the podcasting community, is I've just ended up making a lot of online friends who are so supportive. And, me and my friend rolled out our Queen podcast today, and we've already got a ton of downloads and lots of engagement online. And that's because people like you, people like the guys from the Lap Pods podcast are so supportive, retweet and sort of comment on things. And that little community that we've got going of independent podcasters is just such a wonderful thing to be part of, right?
Oh, it really is. And, Scott Haskin from the Magicians podcast, that's the Uriah Heep show.
Yeah.
He's now our permanent co-host on Backtrack's Aerosmith Revisited, starting around show 38. So you have that to look forward to. And he's going to be part of the live show we got coming up, as well as George from the Judas Priest cast. So it's a great little community. And we all kind of, interact with each other. And they're all different shows and all different people. And it all works. Just support independent podcasters, support music podcasters, and support Kevin Brown. He's one of the best ones out there. I love your show. Can't wait to hear the Queen one. I'm a little pissed that I'm not on it, but you know what? I'll get over it.
Me and Randy were talking about that when we recorded. We just want to get a couple more. We want to get a couple of wheel spins under our belt. And then I think genuinely, literally episode 4, we want to get you on, because we've got to pay homage to the godfather of this format. It's because it's funny. It's one of those things where that podcast, the relationship between you and Mark is definitely what carries it, but the format does a lot of heavy lifting for you, because the format itself creates a little bit of conflict, and you can sort of have a conversation online because you put your polls out and that gets that conversation going. So it's just such a brilliantly conceived format that's like, I'm gonna ask Corey if I can do this. I'm gonna have to see if I can do Queen. You said yes, so I was like, fuck, this is gonna be awesome. I can't wait.
Well, we got to give credit to Pot of Thunder.
Yes, of course.
They ran so we could walk. But I hope your wheel is as funky as ours, because we went like 10 shows before we got a Sammy tune. Like, it was all Dave early.
Yeah.
And then just these little idiosyncrasies we got with the wheel. Then Eric Senich comes on, calls a shot, calls for Cabo Wabo, gets it. I called my shot one week, got it. So that's 2 now in the first 50 episodes where someone has called their shot and got the song. But it's so weird to see how they all fall. And I know, like, you're the big number cruncher, and you've been posting the numbers for us on Twitter. We've got like nothing from Diver Down, yet we've done like half of a different kind of truth, which is so weird. Like, you think it'd be a little more evenly spread out, but so I really hope your wheel is eclectic.
It's the beauty of randomness, right?
It really is. And if I spin Delilah when I come on your show, I'm gonna be so pissed.
No mulligans on my show either. There's no mulligans. No do-overs. You put that paranoia in my head that the first 5 songs we're going to do are all going to be all Brian May vocals, so we're not going to get to talk about Freddie.
It's going to be all from like Made in Heaven. You're going to get like 5 tracks off Made in Heaven. You're going to be like, what the hell did we get ourselves into?
Awesome, my friend. Okay, well, we'll leave it there, folks. Like I said, go check out Corey. Go check out all the shows that he's on. And the day after this releases is going to be the Fillmore 97 box set release party in the basement at Winston's. So if you are in Saskatoon, and I think maybe 1 or 2 people maybe in Saskatchewan listen to this podcast, but come down, we're going to have a big party, and it's going to be the first chance to listen to those tracks. And I was very, very surprised and honored to be able to throw that party. I think we're the only one in Canada, Corey. We're the only venue in Canada that's actually hosting an advanced listen party, which is fantastic, right? So
So I'm checking my work schedule. I'm like, can I make the 4-hour drive to Saskatoon and go party listening to that with my good buddy Kevin Rutten? I really hope I can make it.